You know, you've probably heard the phrases before: a thief in the night, a master who returns without any warning. Two people are standing side by side and then poof, one is just gone. This imagery, it's from Matthew 24, and it's some of the most dramatic and famous stuff in the entire Bible. But what if? What if we'd been missing the real point this whole time?
I mean, this is the verse right here. This is the one that has kicked off so many theories and really fueled that very specific vision of the end times. You know, the rapture. It's this idea of a sudden, almost magical disappearance of believers from the earth. It's a really powerful and frankly, kind of scary image. But what if the people who first heard this heard something completely different?
And that, right there, is the big question we're diving into. Was Jesus actually predicting the final, ultimate end of human history? Or was he giving a very specific, very urgent warning to his followers about something they were going to see in their own lifetimes? Because let me tell you, the answer to that changes, well, it changes everything.
So, to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start where it all began, with the question. See, Jesus wasn't just giving a random speech, he was directly answering a question from his closest followers.
This is it. This is the question that set this entire prophecy in motion. The disciples, they want to know two things. What's the sign of your coming, and what's the sign of the end of the age? And believe it or not, where they ask this question is just as important as the question itself.
Right. They were sitting on the Mount of Olives, literally looking across the valley at this magnificent, huge temple. And according to this reinterpretation, for them, the end of the age wasn't some abstract future concept. It was totally tied up with the fate of that building and the city of Jerusalem. The entire prophecy flows from this very specific, very physical place.
Okay, so how did Jesus answer them? Well, he didn't give them a simple checklist. He used a series of analogies, stories, really. He talked about the days of Noah, a thief in the night, and a master returning to his servants. And this is where the popular view we all know starts to really split from what the original context seems to suggest.
So check this out. This is where we see this huge shift in thinking. In this view, the days of Noah isn't just about people partying and being clueless about God. And the thief in the night? It's not about a secret, silent disappearance. It's about the unexpected timing of a very visible, very real military attack. I mean, think about it for a second. The warning God gave Noah's generation wasn't a whisper. It was a gigantic boat being built in the middle of dry land. Can you imagine? It probably took decades. Every single day, Noah hammered another plank onto that ark. It was a huge public sign that judgment was on its way. The problem wasn't a lack of signs. It was that people ignored them until it was suddenly too late. And here's a really cool linguistic detail from that Noah story that connects it all to Jesus' time. The Hebrew word shehet, which means corrupt or ruined, it shows up again and again. The world had become so shehet that God's response was to shehet it, to ruin it, to destroy it. It's this powerful pattern. God eventually judges deep, systemic corruption. And Jesus saw that exact same kind of corruption in the leadership of his own day.
Okay, so this brings us to the absolute core of the reinterpretation. What does one taken, one left actually mean? The common view, of course, is that the taken one is raptured up to heaven. But this interpretation suggests taken means being taken away to safety, just like Noah and his family were taken to safety in the ark. And left? Well, that means being left behind to face the coming judgment, which in this case was the destruction of Jerusalem. It's an earthly rescue, not a heavenly one.
All right, so let's look at that last analogy, because it really builds to the central command of this whole entire passage. Jesus tells this little story about a master who goes on a trip and leaves his servants in charge.
Now pay close attention to what the master rewards. He blesses the servant he finds faithfully doing his job, in this case, feeding the household. He doesn't come back and say, "Hey, great job on creating those elaborate charts trying to predict the exact day and hour I'd be back." No, the focus is 100% on faithful work, not on trying to predict the future.
And that's it. That is the punchline. The whole prophecy, with all its warnings and all its signs, boils down to this one simple, powerful command: be ready. But being ready in this context doesn't mean sitting around staring up at the sky. It means getting to work and faithfully carrying out the mission you've been given.
So, did this actually happen? Did it play out in history? Well, according to early church historians, the answer is a resounding yes. This wasn't just some abstract spiritual warning, it had a real-world, historical fulfillment.
And when you look at the timeline, it's pretty staggering. About 40 years after Jesus gave this warning, the Jewish revolt against Rome began. The Roman armies, a great and powerful people, just like the old prophets described, they mobilized. And according to the church historian Eusebius, the Christians in Jerusalem saw this as the sign Jesus had told them about, and they got out. They fled the city.
And here's the really astonishing part. Eusebius claims that when the Roman general Titus finally surrounded and destroyed Jerusalem in the year 70, there wasn't a single Christian left in the city to be destroyed with it. They had listened to the warning. They were taken to safety while the others were left to face that terrible judgment.
So for those first-century disciples who heard this from Jesus, the lesson was incredibly practical. God will judge corruption. The way to be ready wasn't to become a prophecy expert, but to be a faithful servant focused on the mission at hand. And if they did that, they wouldn't just be spared, they'd actually be blessed.
Which, of course, brings it all back to us. Right now, the world is still full of corruption. Leaders still lead people down the wrong path. So if Jesus' command to be ready was never really about decoding the future, but about faithfully doing the work he gave us, it really forces us to ask ourselves, in a world that is still so in need of healing and hope, what's the household that we're supposed to be feeding right now?